Great. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us to learn more about the Farm to Early Care and Education program and how to get started with your application process. I'm joined today, my name is Marcia Pessoloano. I'm with the Connecticut Department of Public Health, and I'm joined today by Shannon Rader-Ginsburg from UConn Extension and Put Local on Your Tray. We also have with us today Deborah Brandon from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, who's a nutrition consultant in my unit. I want to first, before we get started and talking a little bit about Farm to ECE and the funding that's available, just acknowledge our program partners and the funders. We are funded with federal funding from the United States Department of Agriculture and from the CDC, and joined by a variety of different partners across the state, both state and local organizations that are all listed here. So today we're going to talk about what Farm to Early Care and Education is, how to get started with Farm to ECE. We're going to talk about why it's important and what benefits it can have for you, your staff, the families that you work with, and the community that you live in. And then at the end, we'll talk about the funding opportunity and the resources that are available from the Connecticut Department of Public Health and our partners. And with that, Shannon, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started.
Thanks. And we're a small group today, so I welcome questions into the chat, and between Marcia and I, we will get to those. So first, what is Farm to Early Childhood Education? There are really three components that bring farm to school work together. It's local purchasing or procurement, like actually bringing locally grown product in to eat. School gardens or any kind of hands-on working in the soil, garden exploration, growing plants. And then sort of more broadly community engagement, which would be going to farmers markets and maybe inviting farmers in. It's taking those experiences out into the community and field trips and so on like that. And so we sort of sometimes say that no one thing is farm to school, but when they form sort of a nexus together, so that when you're thinking about what is farm to school, it's like a little bit of everything, and it's and to create a balance as a nexus. So garden-based education, nutrition, trying new foods, student engagement with visiting places outside in the community is what the farm to school movement is. And then, so we say farm to school broadly, and what we're talking about here is farm to early childhood education, which is 0 through 5 years old. So the next slide. And then why is farm to school, why do we talk about this as an important part of early childhood development? One thing we ask is, like, do children and families, like, what happens when they know where their food comes from? There's a lot of research that has been published over the years about the positive impact on health and well-being on young people who understand that food and food production is part of their neighborhood and part of their community. Food traveling from far away, no one wants to give up bananas and coconut milk, and certainly there are many culturally important foods that we can't grow right here in Connecticut. And food that travels less miles has been shown to be more nutritious, more delicious. Seasonal eating has a range of benefits that are also environmentally friendly. And then, of course, the multiplier impact of having that in our communities, supporting local farmers, supporting the farm community, being able, even at the grocery store where you can sometimes get locally grown foods, the whole chain of production that brings from farm workers to your plate benefits when we know about where that comes from. And it has a lot to do with relationship building. Healthy food, local food in terms of taste and quality means less food waste. It means kids are more likely to try new fruits and vegetables, which we all know, to 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. It's not their strength, is trying new foods. And at the same time, when they have relationship with those foods, that can happen from farm to school education, they really are interested in it. So there's a lot to bridge the gap there. Next slide. And so how can this curriculum and these experiences, you know, how does it benefit us? How does it continue to help? Like, why is it important and what does it help? And so you could see here, just, you know, this is the age to begin healthy habits, right? To start for children to have experiences that really shape healthy habits, right? This is why we talk about at this age playing outside versus screen time, to start to develop the patterns of being for these young children. And this happens on the palate. So this is the time when, tactile work, exploring seeds. You don't have to know the why, right, at this age, but getting your hands in the soil, looking at worms, they're so open in the ECE age, and beyond, that you're setting the stage for these experiences. And there's just, again, so much research on the positive impacts of involving young children in a healthy food experience, right? So that the kids don't yuck the new idea because they've had an experience like, oh, I picked the pea off of a plant and ate it. And how that comes back to the grocery, like, oh, I see peas in the grocery store. Like, I recognize the source of that. Oh, I want to eat the peas because I've had an experience with it. They don't even know that it's happening. It's so subtle. And of course, next slide. There's so many stories like of children that I've experienced who don't like something until they had this experience of picking it themselves. Here we see little Bella deciding that, oh, I do like that. And we see this time and time again in the farm to school field and people who do environmental and food education work. Same with cooking, the little kids using a plastic knife to cut up a strawberry, even if it's something that doesn't need cut up, right? Just that experience of engaging and forming relationships with food, relationships with soil, relationships with seeds, really changes habits. And, next week she might decide she doesn't like salad, but then the next week she might decide again, because we know how kids are. But these foundational lessons are very, very profound. So beyond just the individual benefit to a child, and the joy and excitement of seeing children eat fresh fruits and vegetables, and are the community benefits of farm to school in general, farm to community. So this slide says farm to EC, but it's really, shortening that distance and shortening the relationship between the production of food through the children, through staff and educators, families. The benefits ripple through. And in Connecticut, the agricultural landscape here, you don't have to go far to find a family farm. It feels like there may be not a lot, but even in the cities, in Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, community gardens, community farms, urban farmers, there's been a real growth and explosion in the accessibility, through farmers markets for all people all throughout the community to access local foods and to feel the value of local foods beyond just like local food is good, but knowing the people, are they getting fair wages? How does it impact the environment? Really reflecting the values, stewardship, caring for others, these values that we want to instill in children and that their families want to instill in them is really magnified through local food. So let me see, just scrolling through notes. So it's a critical time to establish these patterns and in our institutions, like your daycare centers. So next slide. And this so this slide we're going to spend a minute on because how do you get started with a farm to school, even idea, right? Starting to set those goals. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes here talking about how to set some goals. What are the potential challenges? How do we think about partnerships and the importance of administrative buy-in? And I'm going to put into the chat a link here to a Google Doc. Oh, did that work? Put it in again, so that you can follow along in a little bit more depth. I thought instead of putting in a ton of slides, we would shorten it a bit. So you can follow along with this link if you'd like, or you can just listen. And are there any questions so far? You could put it in the chat, or pretty straightforward. Marcia, anything you want to fill in with?
No, sounds good so far, Shannon.
All right. So the first thing here is how to set a goal. And the grant and the grant program that Marcia is going to talk about next really helps will walk you through fine tuning and identifying these 4 points. So it might feel a little overwhelming now to look at it, but the purpose of the grant program is to also help people get started and think about this. So no one needs to have any answers now. So, but you would go ahead and ask yourself sort of 2 questions with these goals. One first question to start with is, what do you want to accomplish? You know a little bit about the benefits of farm to school. You kind of intrinsically know that this is a great thing to offer your families and children. So what do you want to accomplish? And again, referencing back to those 3 areas, which is buying local or like getting actual local foods onto the plates, or in taste tests and snacks, gardening and growing activities, which doesn't have to look like a bunch of raised beds. It could be something, in pots in the windowsill, right? So lots of different ways kids get their hands in the soil. And then also engaging with the community of farmers, visiting farmers markets, field trips, bringing farmers in to talk. So goals around those 3 areas. And then what will be most beneficial for my childcare center or my home daycare? What is most beneficial? What do I think my community wants? And this is where you can ask yourself about like, what is culturally empowering and culturally celebrational about farm to school? So it's not coming from a place of like, I need to teach people how to eat good fresh foods, but like also what is the knowledge that already exists and how can you leverage that in your goals? Challenges. Rather than getting bogged down, it's really easy. It does take resources and time. And thinking of I think the biggest challenge facing folks in integrating new ideas is just the mindset, right? Is just the mindset of like, this is important, right? Because we all make time, make time and find resources for the things that matter to us in all of our work and in all of our lives. And so that first challenge of overcoming like I don't have time for this, but when it really is important and you really value the benefits, right? That the challenges of staff time, facilities, space for gardening, asking yourself like, how concerned am I about the way we eat in our center? And this is like from staff through, little kids, right? Looking how everybody can be learning together. What do you have room for? What kind of budget might you need to develop to accomplish anything? So and then sustaining whatever changes you decide, right? That's often a challenge. Well, I might start this, but then I'm not going to be able to sustain it, right? So looking at like, what are the challenges to sustaining something? Partnerships. So this is not something you do alone. At its very core, farm to early childhood education and farm to school is rooted in community partnerships. Your program will be stronger and more sustainable when you engage multiple partners at the table, you know, each bringing a different strength, not everybody having to do a whole lot. If you're the only staff person at your center that wants to do this, you know, start finding your allies, talking about it, sharing your values around it, like why you think it's important. And, you know, for home daycare providers, you may not have as much convincing to do if you want to do it, but your families, nonprofits, you know, grandparents, there's a lot of external potential partners that, and that's part of the technical assistance that can come with this grant, is to help you identify those. So you're already relying on a community to make your businesses work. And so bringing this one, you know, bringing this into the lens just like broadens the opportunity for partnership. And last, administrative buy-in. And, you know, this leads to the question of, in larger centers and even small home daycare centers, is with the goal of like creating some policies around like, this is what we do. This is how we keep ECE vibrant in our centers and with our families. So, you know, administrators, we all know if they have buy-in from the beginning, it's a stronger partnership. So that you're really talking with the folks who, you know, are certain gatekeepers for resources from the very beginning, especially when looking at if you need approval for budgets, staff time, volunteers. You know, one of the challenges I didn't, of course, talk about, I think it's in my bullet, is COVID and how we're coming out of this pandemic. So this grant program coming up and the Go Knapsack program that is linked to is very aware of the challenges of this past year and how tired and exhausting it has been. So the fact that you're even here and interested is amazing, because it's rather than it being like one more thing we have to do, it's like, and we could do this, right? And we could do this. And I think that's important for administration to hear, because getting outside, you know, and hopefully we're moving into a time when we can start to connect a little bit in a new way. And I can't imagine anything more lovely than children going to a farmer's market. And so maybe not this summer, but starting to lay the landscape out for that being possible, really, when this pandemic has made it safer, when we're all much safer. So again, administrative buy-in, one, you know, think about what are your ideas to do that, you know, whether you volunteer to be the chair of a farm to school committee, starting small, right? Starting small and building up. So that was a lot of information on the getting started. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next slide, which is related, you know, to partnerships and, you know, engaging your community. And so it's like, what is the difference between a partnership and engagement? You know, partnership is really asking people to like play a part in making it happen. And engagement is, you know, including people, communication, transparency, and you're already engaging your families. So you think about the way you're already communicating what's going on. The kids are communicating, you know, with their parents. And well, my kid didn't communicate. They were always like, it's fine. And other kids would talk to their parents more about what happened at daycare. So there's lots of different ideas, really a chance to be creative in all these ways, because ultimately, like, it's your daycare center. It's maybe your home, and you're the one who knows best what's manageable for you. You know, it's easy as somebody from the outside be like, you could do this, 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 and this, and then feel overwhelmed. So how you engage parents and community members is a really, really an opportunity to think very uniquely about who is already part of your community. What holidays do they celebrate? How do they travel to and from the daycare center? How do people receive information? You know, it'd be easy to just say a list of ideas right now, but that's the fun work ahead through this process, is to think about how to really be engaging and with the folks around you, because this is really what's going to put a lot of wind in the sails. Like, really, it's going to put water in your watering can to like have that buoy support, especially if you're trying to convince administration or get resources. Like, when we know when parents want something, it provides a lot of momentum. All right, and next slide. So then what will happen next is you'll start to take some steps towards actualizing, this idea, your ideas, your interests. Starting small, we couldn't emphasize more. And part of starting small is looking at where you might already be, because every year you might be doing some things that are already farm to school oriented that you didn't even realize were, like, just cutting up, talking about parts of a plant, is farm to school, looking at insects outside is part of farm to school, and so you might already be doing more than you realize. And it's trying to put that in context of maybe the next step where you are kind of utilizing broader resources to be more explicit about local, healthy, delicious food. Go to the next slide. So I'm just going to invite people to put into the chat if you are doing anything or what ideas might be bubbling up as you listen. I know it's hard in these kind of workshops to be interactive, but there's some ideas here in this slide about what you could do. But are you already doing a lot of these things or some of these things, or getting inspired for an idea that you might want to do? And I can read them out. We have the home daycare provider where my child went for a long time. They would just go for walks in the neighborhood, and she would ask them to notice the colors of the flowers and if they heard birds. And even though that's not about food, it's the same translation of getting children to notice the environment around them and what it produces. But ultimately, like, your ideas are going to be the most powerful ideas. Is there anyone, and also if you're doing cooking already, or you have some ability to do some cooking in your centers, getting the folks who, if there's food service, that's an important partnership. Are the people in the kitchens being included in this? So, all right. I think this might be, again, circling back to a few things to remember. Go to the next slide, Marcia, that, again, this is really what we want to help this grant achieve, right? Is to start with these steps. So what we just talked about, like how to incorporate farm to ECE into your current activities. What are you already doing that it would work well with? Math skills by counting, cherry tomatoes, or squirting the seeds out of a tomato, and separating them. A lot of fine motor and, fine motor skills in this kind of exploration. And really, starting to think outside of the box about how do you try something new, right? There's a lot of unknowns in starting new programmatic activities and introducing new curriculum, especially to bring staff and partners online with it. So again, focusing on efforts that already fit in with the culture and atmosphere of where you are. If you have a bunch of people that don't really garden, don't build a big garden kind of thing. You want to make people uncomfortable. You want to make people excited.
And Shannon, I just wanted to cut in and let you know there are some folks that provided some examples of things that they've done.
Yeah, I was seeing that pop up.
So if you want to go ahead and pause here and read those.
Yeah. So, and pardon me if I mispronounce your name, is it Ratisha? Says I recently had teachers request some materials for gardening. Gathering information about how to make that possible has led you here. So that's excellent. And hopefully this grant could help with that. Giselle says, in the past, I've had a fresh garden and have students handpick the vegetables, wash them and eat them, especially the tomatoes. Yes, there are some really special things that are easy to grow and super rewarding, like cherry tomatoes. Eggplant, probably not great for your farm to ECE garden. Randy says, we have done planters for the classrooms, such as pizza pot containers with tomatoes and basil. Herbs are great for farm to ECE, tactile, smell, taste, easier to grow, so somewhat resilient to a lot of kids handling. And they're also come back every year. So not all herbs would you need to reinvest money every year to grow in your herb garden. All right. And so the next slide, I think, is my last one here before I hand it over to Marcia. There's a lot of places to look for inspiration. And rather than be overwhelmed, is to be inspired and really look for the things that fit for you. And if you want to continue to put questions or comments in the chat, as Marcia starts to talk more about the grant and the process for it, we'll keep our eye on those comments and questions.
Great, thanks, Shannon. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up here and talk a little bit about the application process, and then the post-application process, which includes using our Go Knapsack system. Everyone who's selected to participate in the Farm to ECE program will use Go Knapsack to help identify best practice areas to work on. So one of the things that Shannon mentioned is that although you're putting in a proposal for this application to receive the funding, you will have support to help you refine that proposal and help you really identify action steps to fit your proposal in and meet best practices. So don't think that you have to do this alone. This kind of initial application process is just what I said it is. It's a proposal to kind of present to us what you're interested in and where you want to go with your farm to ECE work, whether it's an expansion of an existing program that you're doing or something new that you want to try. So the Farm to ECE program will provide funding, resources, and support to child care providers. And as you know from the materials that we put out, this is for child care providers, both home-based, group home-based, and center-based programs that are CACFP or Child and Adult Care Food Program authorized. So we're going to be working with folks that have CACFP, but are a variety of different sizes. So it doesn't matter what size your program is, you're eligible to participate if you are CACFP and you are not part of a K through 12 school district. Selected child care providers will be able to receive a minimum of $250 up to a maximum of $750 each based on enrollment size. And like I said before, the opportunity can support new projects or the expansion of existing projects. And actually, some of the folks that I see on the call today are familiar names to me, and I think have maybe participated in other opportunities that the department and our partners have put out. So that's exciting to see that folks are hopefully expanding on past projects that they've been working on. We are doing this through a competitive application process. We already issued a first cohort application, which was closed as of January 15th. We had 23 applicants during that cohort, and all 23 were awarded. So just so you can get a sense of the competition that's out there, we were able to luckily award everybody who applied. Cohort 2 is the cohort that's currently open. The application is due on April 1st. And again, just for the eligibility component, must participate in the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And we're looking for licensed centers, group homes, or family child care homes or sponsors that are not part of a school district. I've included the link to the application, and this presentation will be available to you later, but it's also available on the Put Local on Your Tray website. There's an application guidance document available in English and Spanish. I strongly suggest that you take a look at the guidance document before applying so that you can understand what the program's looking for. It describes some of the information that Shannon provided and will reiterate some of the information that I'm about to provide to you as well. All applications must be submitted using SurveyMonkey, and there's 2 different links. Again, both are available on the Put Local on Your Tray website and will be made available to you through this presentation later today. Just a little bit about the application questions. We're looking for information about your site and the families you serve. We're going to look for a description of your proposed Farm to ECE project. And Shannon provided you a lot of great questions and things to think about. Again, this is meant to be a proposal, a narrative description of what you're hoping to accomplish with this project. It doesn't mean that you have to have everything sketched out yet. Part of what we will help you do is really finalize that plan and make sure that you have all the steps and all the resources that you need in order to accomplish that, including identifying partners, working with your families, and coming up with ways to really operationalize what your plan is or what your proposal is. We're going to ask you for information about any previous Farm to ECE projects that you've done and how that relates to this proposed project. If you've been doing something, we want to know about it. So some of those examples that you shared, those are all great things that you've started. How are you going to expand on those things? How are you going to continue to grow your Farm to ECE program? Like Shannon said, you're probably doing more than you think. And so it's just thinking about how are you going to put all those things together to hit those 3 components that she talked about. We'll also ask you for a description of any partners that you plan to work with. This question for some might be harder than others. As Shannon mentioned, if you're a center-based program, you may have a lot of different partners within your network. If you're a family provider or home-based program, you may have a smaller network of people, or maybe you have a large connected network. Either way, any partners that you think that you want to work with or that you're currently working with, you can describe in your application. And finally, we want a budget for your project based on the amount of funding that you are eligible for. So again, I talked about eligibility criteria and the number of children that you serve in your program, and all of that is described in the application document. And just to reiterate, if you're selected for funding, you will be paired with somebody, a technical assistance consultant, to help you finalize all your plans and your budgets during implementation. So just when you're thinking through the application process, remembering that this is a proposal, that we want to hear your ideas and what your goals are for your program, but that you don't have to have all the details figured out. Shannon talked about the important proposal components and really how a holistic Farm to ECE program is comprised of these 3 components on the side. Purchasing, so making sure you're purchasing local foods and providing them through meals, snacks, taste testing, etc. School gardens and other, gardening experiences, and then educational opportunities. We want to make sure that we see that your proposal includes components of all 3. So if you've been doing gardening, maybe you'll do a little bit more gardening, but focus on these other 2 areas. Vice versa, if you've already been doing a lot of nutrition or agriculture education, how can you expand on that, but then work in these other 2 areas as well? So just to give you some examples of Farm to ECE activities within each category, for purchasing or procurement, looking at promoting and increasing access to locally grown food for providers, staff, and your families, including locally grown food and meals and snacks. And that can be looking at, are there opportunities for seasonal foods? Apples in the fall, as we come into the summertime, looking at things like squash or tomatoes. How can you be incorporating more locally grown foods in your meals and snacks? And then featuring locally grown foods and taste tests and food preparation with children. Shannon talked about some of those like cherry tomatoes and things that are easy to grow, but it's also about getting them on the plate for the kids to try. Because we know that kids, like she said, some days they'll try it, some days they won't, right? And sometimes you just need to keep putting it in front of them to really get them interested. Gardening activities could include growing edible plants in gardens, on windowsills, or with indoor grow lights. Most people think of large-scale gardens, but like Shannon talked about, there's opportunities for small windowsill gardens, potted opportunities. There's also seed and soil exploration activities that can be incorporated into your site. So think about all the different ways that gardening can be incorporated into part of your plan. And finally, education and experiential learning could be things like integrating curricula that supports exploration of food, agriculture, gardens, and nutrition. You don't need to recreate the wheel. There's curriculum available for you that you can use and incorporate in. It's not about developing, it's about identifying something that will work for your program. And then also things like taking field trips to farms, farmers markets, and community gardens can be a great education and experiential learning opportunity. So just some important proposal components around the budget and funding. A couple of really important things to mention are about the restrictions in purchasing food. Although we do recognize that a small portion of budgets might need to include food and should include purchasing locally grown produce, things like fruits and vegetables and so on, you can't include more than 20% of your proposed budget for purchasing local foods. And that's a restriction of the federal funding. Although they want you to be able to use a little bit of your money for that, you can't use all of your money for that. So think of other ways that you can spend your funds, but a strong budget will include that 20% maximum, because we really do want you to have this opportunity to go to farmers markets or go to local places and purchase some local food. You can also use funds for things like materials. So we talked about different types of gardens that you could purchase, sponsoring visits to local farms or gardens, and then we talked about the local foods. I did provide a couple of examples just so you could see what simple budgets look like. This doesn't have to be any kind of complicated budget, but we do need to have a description of what you're going to be doing with the funding or what your plan is for the funding. And also making sure that this food budget, which is right in the middle right here, doesn't exceed the 20%. So 20% of $750 is $150, and 20% of $250 is $50. And again, these sample budgets will be available to you in the presentation. They'll be emailed out after today's call so that you have them to think about. And for our post-award timeline, just so that you understand what the implementation period is for this, we're looking for the project start for selected applicants by June 1st. Notification of selected applicants will be by May 1st. So that gives us a little bit of time to get everybody, we can do our review panel, look at everybody's application, and then notify participants if they've been selected. If you have been selected, then we'll go through the process of establishing you in our system so that we can issue payment, and then getting you started in the Go Knapsack system, which I'm going to talk about shortly. So we're looking to have folks work with us between June 1st of 2021 through May 31st of 2022, recognizing that some folks may finish before May 31st of 2022, depending on what kind of project you're implementing and how long it takes you. We will be issuing funds after July 31st for those programs that are participating based on completing some initial items at the beginning. All of this information can be found in the guidance document. And again, this presentation will be emailed out to you. So one of the things that we're having all of the applicants who are selected participate in is our Go Knapsack, or Go Nutrition and Physical Activity Self-Assessment for Childcare. We do this because it's an easy system to use, and it's a way to keep you organized and ensure that you have access to a series of resources that we have through the state. Go Knapsack is it's a nationally developed program developed by researchers, public health professionals, and childcare professionals from the University of North Carolina and other states. It's proven effective in making healthy changes. The research shows that people that participate in Go Knapsack, or the childcare sites that participate in Go Knapsack, their kids actually increase healthy eating, improve their physical activity, and there actually are statistics that they did when they did the initial research about more kids achieving a healthy weight. So it really is an evidence-based program. It's been widely used and trusted in more than 20 states, and we use it for a variety of different reasons in Connecticut. There are 7 different modules available within Go Knapsack, and for the purposes of this project, we'll be focused obviously on the Farm to Early Care and Education module. Programs that enter into the Go Knapsack system walk through a 5-step improvement process. First step is to assess. So upon initial enrollment, you will take a self-assessment to compare your practices at your site to nationally known best practices. This will allow you to identify gaps and come up with step number 2, which is an action plan. So this is why we're saying this initial part is a proposal, and we'll help you kind of finalize that proposal based on the self-assessment results and what your action plan is. Once you complete your action plan, the third step is actually putting it into practice. So that's when you will take action. That's where you can have the support of a technical assistance consultant like Shannon to help you then implement your plan and come up with ways to achieve any goals or objectives that you have for your program. For example, Shannon talked a lot about different kinds of gardening experiments or things that you can do in classroom. She also has a lot of connections to farmers in the state and a lot of ideas of how you can connect back and forth. So during this implementation period, that's when you'll get some support from your technical assistance consultant. You will learn more. This may include things like training or access to resources. I talked about existing curricula that you can use in your classroom. The Go Knapsack system has a series of curricula already on the system that you can access and just download and use. They also have a variety of tip sheets, including handouts for parents and all kinds of other information available for you. And the final step, it says here, keep it up, but it's really a self-assessment. You're going to reassess your program to see if any changes occurred over the implementation period. You'll also be doing a little bit of reporting to tell us about the program, all the supports that are in place, and where additional supports were needed. So like I said, each participating provider who's selected would be assigned a technical assistance provider like Shannon. You'll be receiving an onboarding call with your technical assistance provider, and that's to help you understand the Go Knapsack system. We recognize that using online systems may not be familiar to everyone, so we want to give you that opportunity to learn about the system, where everything is, and have your technical assistance provider explain everything to you. You'll also receive support from your technical assistance provider throughout the process, have access to training resources for you and your staff, and you're going to receive resources up to $150 worth to help support implementation. For anybody who's participated in any of our programs, you know that you get a bag full of goodies from us. It includes things like books, toys, and in the Farm to ECE bag, you also get toddler-specific tools, so little watering cans and little different tools here for gardening that you can use with the kids that are made for little hands. You'll also get the Model Child Care Health Policies book. This is a book that's designed to help you develop child care health policies for your site. It has a whole bunch of different examples and can be really useful, not only for Farm to ECE, but for any health-related activities that you want to do. And with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Does anybody have any questions before I get us wrapped up? I'm not hearing or seeing any questions. So let me just say that we obviously feel that the Farm to ECE at the facility level is extremely beneficial for all the reasons that we talked about. And we're really excited to have this application for funding for all of you. You can join Go Knapsack even if you decide not to apply for the funding, if you just want to join Go Knapsack, you can certainly do that, and I can provide you information on that. But if you are selected for funding, you'll automatically enroll in Go Knapsack and be able to access all the resources there. And, we're here to help you get started. So, Shannon, anything else you want to add before we get things wrapped up?
No, I I think that's it. And just thank everyone for their time. And there will be a recording of this on the Put Local on Your Tray website, which I can put in the chat right now. And especially if you wanted to share it with anybody else, any colleagues of yours that that you think would find this interesting. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat here.
Right. Thanks, Shannon. And we will also send an email with the presentation for you. So in case you want it as a reference, but like Shannon said, it'll be available on the website with the recording.
All right,
okay.
everybody,
well, thank
go
you,
and enjoy
everybody,
that
for
sunshine.
Attending. I know, I see folks sitting outside. Enjoy that sunshine and a nice weekend.